and welcome to Citation Needed, a podcast where we choose a subject, read a single article about it on Wikipedia, and pretend we're experts. Because this is the internet, and that's how it works now. I'm Heath, and I'll be hosting this discussion about American politics from the 1800s. And of course, I'm joined by a panel of white guys. They're not all landowners. We're going to do the best we can. We have Cecil, Noah, Tom, and Eli.
Yeah, I'm so white taxis hail me at this point. So I can't argue.
Based on the size alone, yeah, I'd say I'm panel-sized. Yeah.
All right, let's get right into it. Noah, what person, place, thing, concept, phenomenon, or event are we going to be talking about today?
Today, we're going to be talking about Horace Greeley.
All right, and how did you pick Horace Greeley?
Well, because as we barrel towards the inevitable renomination of Donald Trump for the fucking presidency, I want to reassure everyone with a historical example that proves that you can lose a presidential election so hard it kills you.
Here's to hoping.
Good answer.
Well,
Okay.
Yeah.
please.
All
I like
right.
starting on a high note.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Happy start. So who was Horace Greeley?
He was one of the most famous American newspapermen of the 19th century. He was the founder and editor of the New York Tribune. He was among the founders of the Republican Party back when they were the good guys. He was one of the most influential voices in the history of American politics, and he was, I believe, the only person to ever be the presidential candidate for two different major political parties in the same election. He was also relentlessly weird in all kinds of contradictory directions.
Okay, I mean, he was the head of the good Republicans, so how could he not be?
Right, yeah, exactly. No, I started off there, yeah. So Greeley was born on February 3rd of 1811 on a small farm near Amherst, New Hampshire. In the Wikipedia article, it says he, quote, could not breathe for the first 20 minutes of his life, end quote. But I find that hard to believe because there were additional minutes in his life after that. Right? Sure. So I feel like they mean that he couldn't breathe on his own. I don't know. The Wikipedia article implies that this oxygen deprivation at birth caused him to develop Asperger's syndrome. I feel like that's not a thing. I don't know. But like, suffice to say that through the modern lens, Horace was probably on the autism spectrum somewhere. But back then he was just eccentric. Or as Ulysses S. Grant would later summarize in a letter, Horace was, quote, a genius without common sense, end quote.
If a baby can't breathe during birth, you have to leave it connected like Dig Dug and work mom's legs like a billows. You just push them.
Yes, that's how it goes. That's how it works.
All right, so Horace's father, Zacchaeus, was a farmer, but he wasn't a very good one. Oh, the names get so good in this one.
I love
So
it. Okay.
that is not the best name I'm going to give you today, Tom.
Zacchaeus
So
sounds like a
throughout
nerdy vampire.
Yeah.
You could have just said vampire.
Like he shows up to the blood orgy and everyone's like, turn the lights on. It doesn't fucking matter. Zacchaeus is here. Hello, my fellow brethren of the night. Don't do it, man. We all talk normal now.
So, Zacchaeus was a farmer, but he wasn't a very good one. So throughout Horace's early life, his family kept having to flee west, lest dad wound up in a debtor's prison. Now, this is the early 1800s. So when I say west, think Pennsylvania.
No, I
right?
will not think Pennsylvania, and you cannot make me. No.
Sound like Joe Biden.
All right, but despite his somewhat transient childhood, Greeley got a decent education for the standards of the day, and he proved to be a hell of a student. At one point, some neighbors offered to pay his way into a prestigious boarding school, but his parents refused to accept charity because sometimes people's pride is more important to them than their children.
Cool. Yeah. All right. We're a family of pride, son, so we can't do that thing with the nice school. Now, pack up your stuff. I borrowed seed from fucking Jebediah at the general store. We're going to fuck him on the bill and flee west again. Pridefully. With pride, we do that. We are Greeleys. Yeah. Just a heads up, if anyone listening to this would like to pay for my son's education, there are some extremely humble things I am willing to do to your holes and hanging pieces. Just ask away, if you know what I'm saying.
So perhaps sensing dad was an impediment to high achievement, Greeley ran away to become a printer's apprentice in 1822. He was 11 at the time, which was too young to work around a printing press, even by the lax labor standards of the day. So it wasn't until 1826, at the ripe old age of 15, that Horace finally nailed that coveted apprenticeship at a Vermont paper called the Northern Spectator. He'd bounce around from paper to paper for the next 5 years, soaking up industry knowledge, and then in 1831, he would set out for New York City to make his fortune.
And for the 4 years prior to the printing press job, he worked in the much safer Pennsylvania mining industry. So
Yeah, right. Right. Now, I should probably point out that shortly before he left for New York, young Horace Greeley had a religious conversion to the relatively young Universalist movement. Now, of course, normally this wouldn't matter to a person's overall story because religion is nothing, and one brand of nothing versus a different brand of nothing doesn't make a substantive difference. But Horace Greeley would go on to try pretty much every other ism he would ever encounter in life. As brilliant as he was in a lot of fields, he does have an almost Paltrow-esque embrace of pseudoscience that rears its ugly head throughout his biography.
Please don't say he invented a candle that smelled like his dick, Noah. Come on.
I mean, it's 1831, Cecil, so I think candles already smelled like burning animal fat. I think he is good.
Eli, you need to see a doctor if your dick smells like burning animal fat, buddy. A lot of I see all the doctors.
I hate for you to find out again this way. Yeah. So anyway, so he gets to New York. He dicks around working for a few different papers for a few years, and eventually he starts a little publication called The New Yorker. But not that, The New Yorker. Not, his was a moderately successful but poorly managed literary magazine that started in 1834 and folded, get it, in 1837. He then went on to publish a thrice weekly paper called The Constitutionalist, which, according to the wiki, quote, mostly printed lottery results, end quote.
A rigged game that mostly survives by preying on the weak's belief in it? Sounds pretty constitutional to me, Noah.
Yeah, right. Well done. Well done. Now,
you still have to vote for Joe Biden. You still have to.
Right, yeah, exactly, regardless. Now, you might wonder where Greeley was finding the money to start all these papers. And this is where we have to introduce Mary Young Chaney to the story, who Horace met shortly after moving to New York. History doesn't know a hell of a lot about her, honestly, but the two married in 1836, and it's rumored that Greeley used her savings to fund his first couple of papers. Wikipedia says of that rumor, quote, citation needed, end quote. Sure. But what we do know is that theirs was not a happy marriage. There was no honeymoon. They rarely took trips together. They were rarely seen together. And by all reports, they hated each other's fucking guts. From very early on in their marriage, Horace avoided his house and his wife, except when impregnating her. They'd have 7 kids altogether, though 5 of them died really young, and at least some of them, and possibly all of them, died from neglect.
Okay, let's write something in here to keep Eli away from that space. Monogamy, see a doctor.
Subtlety, behaving with subtlety, acting with subtlety. Sports ball, there, that'll do it.
Yeah, okay.
Good thinking, Cecil.
All right.
Serotonin. I don't like that I operate on the same principles as a haint.
So, but one thing that Horace and Mary shared was a mutual love for fringe movements. She was an advocate of the Graham diet, which was the vegetarian diet proposed by Sylvester Graham. That's the guy that the graham cracker was named after. And his diet was basically, if it tastes good, you might as well be licking Satan's penis.
Okay, confusing. I don't know whether this is good or bad. And graham crackers are amazing. I'm completely lost. Are we positive or negative
They're
on
not.
this right now?
They're fucking awful. Needless to say,
You
he's
don't like
often
graham
called.
crackers? We'll talk about it
Nobody
later.
likes graham crackers. You got to put
Old
marshmallows
school
and
graham
chocolate.
crackers had no sugar.
Well, that too. Yeah.
The Honey Maids?
Yeah, the old school ones had no sugar at all. No sugar, no honey, no sweetening.
And Tom liked it like that.
and also they taste like shit even when you put the sweetening in, so you can only fucking imagine.
Now there you're wrong.
So now, needless to say, Graham is often called the father of vegetarianism in the United States. And if you're thinking, well, that's not too French, I should also point out that Mary thought one of her sons was a spiritual medium.
But he was actually a small. So got that.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay. Shit tits. Now, if you know the name Horace Greeley at all, it's probably as the guy who said, go west, young man. Or more fully, go west, young man, and grow up with the country. Well, as with pretty much every famous saying ever uttered by anyone, this one is probably misattributed. We know that Greeley popularized that saying, but its actual origin is disputed. But whether coining or popularizing it, Greeley deployed it in 1837 when the financial crisis that would eventually doom his New Yorker had made an awful lot of New Yorkers homeless. So basically, he was saying to New York's destitute, you know what's great is elsewhere.
That last part, Tom actually got that embroidered on a burlap pillow from his dad on his 18th birthday.
Oh, God. Don't be
You know it's
ridiculous,
great,
Cecil. My dad
elsewhere.
whittled it into my going away wheelbarrow. Thank you.
You got a wheelbarrow?
So after the New Yorker closed, Horace goes to work for the phenomenally monikered Thurlow Weed.
Love that.
Fuck yeah.
Love that.
Right? So Weed hired him to edit a state newspaper for the Whig Party called the Jeffersonian. Greeley's editorials were instrumental in the election of the Whig candidate for governor, William H. Seward, and a couple years later, they'd be instrumental in the election of Whig presidential candidate, William Henry Harrison. In fact, Greeley even wrote several popular campaign songs for Harrison, and I know that we don't really have campaign songs anymore, but they were a huge deal at the time. And I'd kind of love to bring them back just to see what kind of atonal kindergarten rhyme bullshit Trump supporters would come up with.
I would like to present Exhibit A, Linda Paulson for United States Senate,
Yes.
Utah District 12, publication date 2022.
See, someone put a link in the notes to this on YouTube. It's an old white lady doing a rap for her Utah Senate campaign. It's a hate crime.
Yep.
It's technically
It's
a hate crime. I watched it, and now I'm on like lists and shit. And the victim, to be clear, of that crime is the concept of time. Her video and audio are misaligned by like, I'm going to say 8 generations of human beings, much like her platform. It's crazy. I think she's trying, based on this platform, she's trying to primary a Whig from the right, but now in today.
I could play it if you want to hear it. Do people want to hear it?
I would.
think
I want
everybody wants to
to
fucking
hear
hear it.
everybody
Yeah.
to
Hear
hear
it
it.
again.
Oh, God.
Hell yeah.
Oh,
Oh.
Hey, Utah District 12, listen up right here. There's a new name on the ballot for the Senate this year. My name is Linda Paulson, Republican and awesome. Love God and family and the Constitution.
Oh, my
I
God.
to get another conservative to run. Nobody could do it, so I'm getting it done. I'm pro-religious freedom, pro-life, pro-police, the right to bear arms and the right to free speech. I want less government control and regulation, want to stop and expose all political corruption where there's integrity. Accountability. Government programs should lead to self-sufficiency and support traditional family as the fundamental unit of society. But in schools, they're pushing for new beliefs. And just
Well,
to
not all of them.
clarify, as a female adult, I know what a woman is.
What is that?
It's a right-wing canard.
That's an anti-trans
Transphobe.
thing.
Fucking stupid.
I love this country. It's a blessing.
Oh, there's
to be
more.
Free, but
Jesus.
freedom comes with.
This is 26 minutes long, Noah.
The Constitution needs to be protected.
This is longer than our
not changed and
podcast.
disregarded, but resurrected. If you share my values, if you like what I stand for, then give me your vote on the 8th of November. District 12 needs a choice. Let me be your voice, Linda Paulson. Linda Paulson for Senate.
There it is, guys.
There it is.
That
We did it,
Linda
everyone.
Paulson for
Just
Senate.
happened.
If you're not picturing her crossing her arms and tilting at the end, you should be.
you definitely are picturing that.
Racistly. Yeah.
Still
Everyone is picturing that.
have to vote for
All right,
Joe
well, that
Biden.
is that is exactly what I wanted, Cecil. I was right. Sorry. So, well, based on his success with Whig papers over the past few years, Greeley decided to give publishing his own paper another go, and in 1840, he launched the New York Tribune. This daily paper is the paper that would make him famous. It would quickly rise to be the most read paper in the country, and under Greeley's leadership, it would publish many of the most important thinkers of the 19th century. Greeley used his paper to promote the works of Henry David Thoreau and Ralph Waldo Emerson. He published hundreds of articles and opinion pieces by Karl Marx, and early in his career, Mark Twain was a staff writer for the paper.
Jesus.
Right? Greeley's was also one of the first newspapers to hire women as full-time journalists.
That is very impressive, but they ran a lot of Doonesbury cartoons, so
Yeah.
fuck that paper. There's no lot.
All right, so this is where we get into the Greeley as both hero and villain thing, though, because through his influence at the Tribune, he wielded enormous political power in the country. During the Civil War, Abe Lincoln would say of Greeley's endorsement, quote, "Having him firmly behind me will be as helpful to me as an army of 100,000 men," end quote. And he used that platform for all kind of good causes. He was anti-slavery, he supported socialism, he was an ardent feminist, and a consistent supporter of the working class. But after the Civil War, he was real quick to jump onto the enough with all this Reconstruction crap camp. He was a major voice in the temperance movement, and he promoted all kinds of cockamamie utopian pipe dreams, including the infamous Oneida cult from episode 120. that involved a lot of child rape.
Okay, I feel like half this essay is just checking Eli into the board so he can't write a joke in some of these places.
Let him cook. Yeah, it's like a neutral zone trap. If you're a hockey person, you understand.
Yeah.
Is your Eli? He's winding up for a bit, and then it's like dead baby hip check, and he's like, stop winding up.
Let him
okay.
So he also managed to make a lot of enemies in government. And obviously that's going to be the fate of anybody who's in the newspaper business, right? But Greeley would explore new heights. And he really kicked that into high gear when he found himself in Congress in 1848. So the guy that was representing New York's 6th District was unseated for election fraud. And there's like a couple months left in his term. So as a thank you for all the hard work he did getting Whigs elected over the past few years, the Whigs nominated Greeley for the seat in a special election. And as soon as he got into the Congress, he was like, wow, this place is super duper corrupt. I should write about that in my newspaper.
Just walking around the House floor. Hello, fellow youths of Congress. Who's bribing tonight, right? Right, bribing. We do that.
Well, to be fair, this was the part of history where the answer wasn't everybody, so that meant something. It meant
Well,
something.
I think it was everybody but Greeley. But yeah, so yeah,
Is
during
that a
his
scribe under your shirt? No.
So during his 3-month stint in Congress, Greeley launched a series of attacks in the Tribune against abuse of legislative privileges. He even tried to introduce a law that would rein in travel expenditures and excessive reimbursement for members of Congress who were all like, what the fuck, dude? And then voted it down, obviously. He would publish lists of all the congressmen who missed votes, and, man after my own heart that he was, he questioned the very existence of the office of House Chaplain.
Nice.
Within those 3 months, he, by his own reckoning, quote, divided the House into 2 parties, one that would like to see me extinguished and the other that wouldn't be satisfied without a hand in doing it, end quote.
Oh, man. Remember when American politics had common ground? Like right before the Civil War? Remember that? That was good times. And I guess we'll find out if Horace gets extinguished. But first, a little apropos of nothing.
Mr. Greenlee, it's Congressman Smithers and Westerson.
Good to meet you, Greeley.
How do you do, sir?
Hi.
Sorry, Westerson was just telling a most amusing story.
Indeed. It seems a certain mayor in my fair district was hoping to have a bridge built, and I told him, first, we fund my campaign, then we see about your bridge.
Right, but that's illegal, though.
Sorry?
Yeah, we're not allowed to withhold public funds for our own gain. It's a crime and everything. I'm telling.
No, yes, sorry. Greenlee, you're new. Let me explain. See, things around here are a little looser than you might used to be, but keep your eyes open. You may see your own form of profit. Hey.
Indeed.
Oh, so you're all committing crimes. It's not just this guy. Okay, I'm going to tell on all of you then.
No. No, see, Greenlee, I'm saying you commit the crimes with us. You see, yes, and you will get to be rich.
Right, but I'm already rich. I'm a congressman. I got a newspaper. Sorry, aren't you guys already rich too?
Yes, I suppose I am.
I'm quite rich myself, yes.
Oh, now that you mention it.
Right. So why wouldn't I just tell people that you're doing the crimes you're doing?
Because if you do, we won't like you.
Okay, I'm just going to tell then.
Oh, man.
We won't like you?
I froze. Nobody's ever done that before.
And we're back. When we left off, Congress was shocked when Horace Greeley turned out to be a narc who famously owned the biggest narking firm in the country in that newspaper.
Right, yeah.
What's next?
So with his brief foray in Congress over, Greeley got back to work at the Tribune. in a very sour grapes kind of post-congressional realization, he decided that he could do more to direct the course of national history through his newspaper than he could ever do in Congress. And given his legislative record, that almost couldn't not be true.
Yeah,
right?
You should have told Bernie Sanders. They were colleagues in everything.
Right?
Yeah, Noah, why didn't you tell him?
I didn't realize until later.
Jesus.
Now,
Because he is him.
so over this period, Greeley was growing increasingly disillusioned by the Whig Party, and not just because they wouldn't let him sit with them at congressional cafeteria or whatever. Like a lot of abolitionists, Greeley was furious over the Compromise of 1850, which was basically the fucking Munich Pact of the Civil War.
Yeah, and that's essentially the Farfenhufen of the Krabbenmouth.
Oh, all right. No, some of that. Jeez. It was a series of bills meant to ease tensions between the free and slave states, which managed to stave off all-out war for like almost a dozen years. And although Greeley would eventually support the 1852 Whig candidate Winfield Scott, his support was tepid at best, and Scott would go down to defeat by the least interesting of all U.S. presidents, Franklin Pierce.
Okay. Fun fact about Franklin Pierce. Winfield Scott was actually Franklin Pierce's old boss when they were in the army.
And that is the most fun fact about Franklin fucking Pierce.
Okay, seriously,
no-
I Googled like fun facts about Franklin Pierce, and Google was like, did you mean facts about Franklin Pierce?
No.
The first result I got was like, his dad was a governor.
Yep.
There you go.
So in 1853, he formally renounced his and his paper's affiliation with the Whig Party over their failure to take a firm stance against slavery. And though Whig officials had a very well, we didn't want you here anyway response to his defection, it's telling that the whole fucking party fell apart and dissolved within a year of him doing that. And around the same time, Greeley became heavily involved in discussions about forming a new political party around the anti-slavery issue, and those discussions would lead to the founding of the Republican Party, which would explain why Greeley's earthly remains constantly turn over like they do.
Yeah, they use his grave as a paint mixer these days.
Yeah,
It's actually
no,
really good.
Keeps the cement from setting. Yeah.
Hey, now. Republicans do not want slavery back. They would consider all the feeding and housing of anyone a wasteful entitlement.
Yeah, right.
Of course, slaves, but no social safety net. That's
Right,
what we
yeah,
want.
exactly.
Yeah.
Now, of course, in 1860, that Republican Party would nominate one Abraham Lincoln as their presidential candidate, and his victory would ultimately touch off the Civil War, even in the absence of him having done anything yet. Right? It's important to remember that the South seceded from the Union not over anything that Lincoln did, but rather over what they feared he would do and had no fucking plans of doing. And for his part, Lincoln hesitated quite a bit to actually do the shit. Right? Even deep into the war, he vacillated on whether or not he would abolish slavery. In fact, more than a year after the Civil War started, Lincoln famously said, quote, "My paramount object in this struggle is to save the Union, and it is not either to save or to destroy slavery. If I could save the Union without freeing any slaves, I would do it. And if I could save it by freeing all the slaves, I would do it. And if I could save it by freeing some and leaving others alone, I would also do that." End quote.
Man, we need that kind of moral vacillation like we need a hole in the head.
Oh, God.
Oh.
Too soon. Too soon. And look, that's a pretty famous quote, right? But what you might not know is that when Lincoln said that, it was in direct response to Horace Greeley. Specifically, it was in response to an open letter he published in the Tribune titled "The Prayer of 20 Millions." In fact, Greeley's paper was so heavily associated with the abolition movement that when the draft riots broke out in New York City, his paper was one of the mob's first targets, and it took more than 150 soldiers to keep it secure.
Yeah, I'd say, can you imagine rioting over being pro-slavery? But I still get tweets from people who rioted over the right to get a disease that would kill them.
right.
So,
Okay, people rioted when they couldn't get a packet of Szechuan sauce at McDonald's during the sauce reboot based on a Rick and Morty episode based on Mulan.
Is this for real?
That is for real.
Yeah.
Human beings, our destiny is just to get mad about some dumb shit and then be like,
Yep.
that's what we do.
us. That's us.
And
Now-
yes, that's real, Tom. For real, real, real.
God damn.
Cops had to be called to multiple McDonald's locations
Yes.
because McDonald's brought back Szechuan sauce, which they did in 98, I think, when Mulan first came out. And then they brought it back because of Rick and Morty. People went
Mhm.
buck wild when they couldn't get
Yeah.
their sauce.
God
It was a
damn.
bit. Why would they?
What?
It was a
Now-
bit.
Up to this point, Greeley has been an easy guy to admire, right? Even if he did support mesmerism and promoted the concept of spirit rapping, which held that ghosts could knock once for yes and twice for no and shit, provided you had the right kind of medium around who was definitely channeling the energy of a ghost and not knocking on the underside of the table. A totally different thing that they were doing. But after the Civil War...
You got to just sit next to that and knock again, like 3 more. You could fuck that up so easily when
Right.
somebody's lying about that.
Now, but after the Civil War, his legacy gets a little more complicated. Like when former Confederate President Jefferson Davis was captured after Lincoln's assassination, Greeley was among the people who paid his bond to get him out of jail. He had a very let bygones be bygones attitudes towards Reconstruction that directly contributed to the Jim Crow era of Southern politics.
Man, that feels like a time that really would have embraced Susan Collins. you
Right?
know?
Look, I know Lincoln was shot at the theater, but these days the cinema has proven just as dangerous.
Oh,
All right.
nicely
That's
done.
an S.
Nicely done.
So throughout this time, Greeley tried to find a way back into elected politics. He had a number of unsuccessful campaigns, including a run for Congress as well as one for state comptroller. But you know what they say about failed candidates for state comptroller? They make great candidates for president, which is going to bring us to the election of 1872.
Yeah, hashtag Greeley would have won.
Right, if Mike Pence had the guts. Yeah. So
Does anybody know what a comptroller is? Is it just a controller of something?
I don't know.
Yeah,
They do
it's the
money?
one,
The
you know how
stuff?
they have the ones on the side of the Wii, and then there's the big one that you can
The
buy. in a
nunchuck. That's
plastic
the
thing.
state
Yes,
nunchuck. Yeah.
Okay.
that's what it is.
So
Idiot.
Initially,
Ignorant fat piece of shit.
Fuck off our podcast. You're like the Munich of the Hundenfood up here.
So
notice that.
initially, Greeley supported the candidacy of Ulysses S. Grant, but Grant's administration was notoriously corrupt, and Greeley fell out of love with it pretty quickly. Then, in 1871, Missouri Senator Carl Schurz formed a new party called the Liberal Republican Party, which was primarily founded in opposition to Grant. But Schurz was foreign-born, so he was constitutionally ineligible for the presidency. So his party decided to tap Horace Greeley as their nominee. Meanwhile, the Democrats were afraid of splitting the anti-Grant ticket, so when they met for their convention a couple months later, they also nominated Greeley.
That's a pretty good play.
Right? So, and they even adopted the Liberal Republican Party's entire platform, and they adopted the Liberal Republican Party's vice presidential nominee, Benjamin Gratz Brown, which was probably a mistake. Brown was such a notorious drunk that, in possibly my favorite anecdote in all of American politics, he once drunkenly buttered a slice of watermelon at a fundraising lunch, thinking that it was a piece of bread.
Nice.
And then, in an effort to cover the gaffe, he had to eat the motherfucker.
You laugh, but I guarantee you, it could take me to 3 restaurants that serve that, except the butter is a hardened knob of solidified oat fat.
Okay. Well, now you've ruined your surprise dinner at Shea. You can barely taste the difference. So I hope you're...
Okay. I
You're
feel
happy.
attacked by this relatable content. First of all, I am genuinely confident I would enjoy buttered watermelon. For sure.
Yeah.
I
Butter,
agree.
good.
Hard agree.
Watermelon, good. What are
Hard
we talking
agree.
about?
Yeah.
I guess we
Salted
should
butter,
probably
like a
try
nice French salted butter on there.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Maybe throw it on the grill.
Or
Let's do
fucking
this
country crock with my hands. I don't care. This would all be good.
All right. So, but even if he'd had a perfectly sober Veep, Greeley stood no chance in the election. He'd burned damn near every political bridge he'd ever walked across. And he also got on the bad side of cartoonist Thomas Nast. You might remember him from episode 276 of this show, where he played a pivotal role in the apprehension of Boss Tweed. Nast's anti-Greeley cartoons showed him paying Jefferson Davis's bail, flinging mud on Grant, and in one case, shaking hands with John Wilkes Booth over Abe Lincoln's grave.
Wow, that's subtle.
Greeley was also a campaigner, which was heavily frowned on back then. Back then, voters expected a certain amount of feigned humility from their candidates. So the standard was that you didn't go out and give speeches where you said, hey, you should vote for me. You had surrogates go out and do that kind of shit. And then you would hang back and you'd go well, I guess I'll take this presidency if no one else is going to finish it. I mean, somebody might as well have it. But Greeley bucked that tradition entirely and went on a strikingly modern national campaign.
I mean, to be fair, I agree with old-timey people that nobody who wants to be president should do it, but I think I want it for different reasons.
I think it's the same reason, I think, but yeah. So it's about here that Greeley's wife shows back up in the story. Now, I've left her out of the story of his life because so did he, right? But she had this lung affliction that had bothered her for decades, and she often spent years away from him at various treatment centers and woo retreats and shit. And through most of his presidential campaign, she was actually off in Europe doing exactly that. But in late June of 1872, she returned from the trip gravely ill, and in mid-October, she took a turn for the worse. Greeley suspended his campaign at that point, and he spent every waking minute by her bedside until she died a few weeks later. Now, there was nothing in their relationship to suggest that they were close or even fond of each other, but Horace was devastated by her death. He fell into a deep depression. He couldn't sleep. He barely even noticed when he lost the presidential election by 220 electoral votes. And a week after the election, he fell ill with an undiagnosed affliction, and only 31 days after the loss of his wife, Horace Greeley died.
I mean, look, anyone who has sex with me 7 times also wins my undying love and affection. So I get it. Is what I'm saying.
Yes, yeah, right. So now his death was actually really awkward for a lot of newspapers because they had just spent months viciously attacking his character in support of Grant's reelection, but mostly they pivoted well to praising all his various and often contradictory reform movements. A would-be utopia that he helped to found in Colorado changed its name to Greeley in his honor, and it's still called that now, and the city of New York would ultimately erect 2 different statues to his memory.
I don't understand. You can be a sore winner. You fucking won. He died. His wife died. You won. Like, if Melania died and then Donald, same, a month later, the only complication for me is like new decorations for my ongoing party.
Right. So now the wiki quotes a historian named Ivor Bernstein, who summarized him like so. Greeley was an eclectic and unsystematic thinker, a one-man switchboard for the international cause of reform. He committed himself all at once to utopian and artisan socialism, to land, sexual, and dietary reform, and, of course, to anti-slavery. Indeed, Greeley's great significance in the culture and politics of Civil War America stemmed from his attempt to accommodate intellectually the contradictions inherent in the many diverse reform movements of the time, end quote. In other words, he didn't know the right way to do shit, but he knew for damn sure this wasn't it.
Right. And if you had to summarize what you've learned in one sentence, what would it be?
Melania could take one for the team anytime she wanted.
Come on. And are you ready for the quiz?
I'm ready. Are you, Melania?
All right, Noah. If Greeley had won, what would he have said in his acceptance speech? A, a list of people he hated. B, a list of people who hated him. C, a sobbing rendition of Candle in the Wind about his wife he met 8 times. Or D, you like me, you Greeley like me.
All right, Eli, D is fantastic.
Thank
All right, it was worth the
you.
entire fucking joke. But I read the guy's biography. It is A, actually.
Yeah.
The correct answer is A.
All right, Noah, what's the best name for a newspaper when the owner makes candles modeled after his own dick?
No.
A, the Piss Patch. B, the Daily Mail. C, the Pubic Herald. Or D, the Wall Street Urinal.
Nice. I feel like that's what we should refer to that
Wall
paper
Street
as
Urinal's
anyway, so I'm
perfect.
going D, Wall Street Urinal.
Correct.
All right, Noah. Greeley at one point felt like being in Congress couldn't compare with the power of being in the media. History has proven this correct how? A, an oligarch bought the Washington Post. B, a different oligarch bought Twitter. C, yet another oligarch already owns a media platform with 2 billion active users. Or D, the 118th Congress is on track to becoming the least productive Congress in history.
Beating the 117th, I'm sure. Yeah, oh, wow, that's tough. I'm going to go with secret answer E, all of the above.
Damn it, he gets it again.
Yeah, he got it. Noah, you got them all. You are the winner.
All right, well, I want a Tom essay next week, damn it.
All right, someone's got to be lost in the cold somewhere.
Excellent. All right. Well, for Tom, Noah, Cecil, and Eli, I'm Heath. Thank you for hanging out with us today. We'll be back next week, and Tom will be an expert on something else. Between now and then, you can listen to Cognitive Dissonance, Lawful Assembly, Dear Old Dads, Talkin' Ship, God-Awful Movies, The Scathing Atheist, The Skeptocrat, and D&D Minus. If you'd like to join the ranks of our beloved patrons, you can make a per-episode donation at patreon.com/citationpod. Tom and Eli have kids. I have a step-kid situation. All that stuff I just named can be expensive in its own way. We need you to go to that place and donate a little bit. That'd be great. What was it again? Patreon.com/citationpod. Kids, step-kids. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, listen to past episodes, connect with us on social media, take a look at the show notes, check out citationpod.com.
And that's when he told me that he was withholding public funds unless people supported his campaign.
Right. And so you need someone to like shut him up, hold the wool over his eyes.
Well, no, I want you to arrest him.
For what?
For the crimes I just told you about.
Sorry, can you start over? I have no idea what you're talking about.
You're the 11th cop I have talked to about this today.
Stop resisting.